Today is Tuesday, December the 3rd. This is the Codes Fair and Farmers Market Committee. I do detect our quorum. We have, however, one item on the agenda, and I know we've had a request to place it to the heel, so we may reconvene the committee momentarily. But that item is BL 2019-6, which amends Title 17 of the Metro Code of Laws regarding the waiting period revocation of a short-term rental permit. Is there a motion to move that?
So moved.
Seconded.
And so Councilmember Parker, who is the co-sponsor of the bill, has indicated that you would like to move it to the heel. Do you have an estimated amount of time?
Can I step out for 1 second?
Yeah, you may. And what's the time?
It's 5 till. Yep.
Okay, we have 5 minutes. We have nothing else on the agenda.
Great.
You got a quorum without me?
Yes.
That's really easy.
I will stay. I have till 5:15.
Did she say that Bill Herbert was going to be here to talk about it? Somebody
Yeah,
said
that was
that.
my understanding. I thought she said that, indicated that. That's steaming hot coffee.
Good stuff.
Are quorums different for each committee size?
You have to have at least 50%.
So we need 5.
Well, there are 10 of us on this committee.
They're almost through bills on second, which I think is the end of their agenda.
Okay.
They're reading very quickly.
Reading very quickly.
Yeah.
Would you be comfortable discussing the substitute?
I believe so, yeah. I don't have a, do you have a copy of it?
I do, yeah. We'll do that just to keep things moving. So if it pleases the committee, we'll go ahead and, is there a call to place this item on our agenda to move the bill?
So moved.
Okay, is there,
Second.
all right, is there the desire of the committee to move the substitute for discussion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, so the substitute is moved, and you can begin discussing the substitute.
Yeah, it's my understanding that this substitute reduces, the original bill said there would be a 12-month penalty for both failure to renew and operating without a permit. We got a lot of feedback from people saying that it's not fair to sort of lump those two categories of unpermitted operation in together. And what this bill does is reduce the waiting period for failure to renew to just 6 months. And yeah, it's based on a lot of feedback from constituents and STR operators and other folks.
And so for our newer members of the committee, are you familiar with how the process is? If you are found to not have a short-term rental permit, you have to go to the
Full
board.
disclosure, I own an STR, so I'm very well versed in it, so I'd have to abstain from any conversation with regard to this particular bill that would affect me.
Okay, but so if you are found to be operating without a permit, you have to file to go before the board, or you don't have to, but you have the option of filing to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. You pay a fairly nominal fee. You have to pay notice mailings. It takes a little while to get on their agenda.
Couple of months?
Kind of depends on how booked up their agenda is, but maybe 6 weeks to a couple of months. During the last term, the council spent 4 years talking about short-term rentals. And just as background for y'all and for anyone who might be tuning in, but kind of the way things had been initially is that if you were found to be operating without it, it was a 1 year, a solid 1 year. And so we had the experience that people would exercise their right to an appeal, which they would do, and they would go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Board of Zoning Appeals would say, well, we cannot give you your permit before a year has expired. And they would say, well, then why am I coming before you? And we're like, because that is the only relief available to you. That's kind of where it was at. So there were discussions with the Board of Zoning Appeals to perhaps give a little bit more leniency
Between the Board of Zoning Appeals
and the council.
okay.
And so the subsequent legislation allowed that flexibility. And what you may have heard in some of the discussions is that the outcomes varied, I guess I would say. And so sometimes the Board of Zoning Appeals would hear a case and they would say, we're gonna set this amount of time before you can get your permit again. In other cases, the Board of Zoning Appeals would feel like it was a sympathetic case and they would say, we're gonna allow you to go pick up your permit tomorrow and sort of do time served.
Sometimes they would ask, like the council person, or the council person could weigh in and say, this has been a problem property, or this has been a really good these have been really good folks, and so there was some kind of,
It was
I don't know
quite
if
a
it was
range.
random.
Mr. Cooper, while you have you here, can I ask you a question about this? We have a lot of emails that have flown in, and whether it's 1 year or 6 months,
And our chair is
penalty
here.
if you don't have a permit, the questions that we're receiving are from people that tried to renew, and for some reason it didn't get there. One person even had come into the office and took a picture of the paperwork on the desk as they were giving it to them, and it didn't happen. So in those cases, would they still be legally subjected to the 6 month or 1 year, or would that be an argument that they had renewed, we just didn't process it properly?
I think they would have the argument that, they would make that case to the zoning administrator, look, I tried, here are the efforts that I did to renew. I guess if the zoning administrator still imposed the penalty, they could appeal that decision as an item A appeal to the BZA. And the BZA, I'm not sure what, they may be able to say, well, you did renew it. Or I don't know exactly how that would work.
Okay.
I would think that those that say that I didn't get the mailing, so that's why it was late, I think that would certainly be a different story then.
Yeah, that would be on their part, but if they had mailed it in or delivered it and had some sort of documentation of either of those, I would think they would have legal recourse to object to the
I would think so.
1 year or 6 months
And
waiting period.
I guess while we're doing Q&A with our attorney, which is very helpful, some of the language that was changed in the code in this bill is to have it be a determination by the zoning examiner. Can you speak a little bit more about how that's defined as different and what's different about
Well, that would
what is
make
today
it
versus now?
an administrative decision as opposed to waiting and going to the Board of Zoning Appeals and having them make that decision. This would allow, for one thing, it would streamline things and make it quicker to get a decision. And really, if there's no discretion, it's an administrative decision anyway. Either if you either renewed or you didn't, or you operated with a permit or you didn't.
And so the zoning administrator would look at the staff reports from host compliance that our staff run, which track like when the room nights are.
I think so, but I would have to defer to codes on that one. I don't know.
But they would presumably use the information that staff currently collect to build the cases and make a determination that.
Yes, they would,
with that.
that's why we have host compliance.
Sounds right. I just want to provide some context to the conversation. I'm Evan with Codes. There's about 1,200, likely about 1,200 illegally operating without a permit, and the best guess is that the vast majority have never have had a permit, and that the vast majority who have a permit do renew on time. So I don't have exact numbers, but I feel like the conversation right now, it's about a really small number of.
Those are all the people we're hearing from apparently.
Okay.
17.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would like to recognize, first of all, our chair, Councilman Copley-Sledge, who's joined us, as well as Council Lady Henderson, who's introduced the bill. We've already moved the substitute for discussion.
Appreciate that.
We've had some questions with codes as well as with Attorney Cooper. And so did the committee members have any other questions for the sponsors, or would the sponsors have? I provided a little bit of background about how the landscape of some of this changed over time during the last 4 years, where at first it was rigid, and then we gave the BZA discretion, and there kind of was a thought that it was a lot of discretion. And so, having said all that, is there anything that final that you would like to add for
I don't believe
the
so,
building
not at this
substitute?
time. Councilman Parker may have shared that we had a lengthy discussion in Planning Committee where this passed with just one vote in opposition. And so I think there were a question or two for Code's staff that I had hoped Mr. Herbert would be here to address. But if I can confer with you on those, then we could maybe share those answers with the whole
With the whole body.
floor. But I welcome your questions if you have any concerns.
I will add that 4 years ago, I sponsored the legislation to give the leeway in exchange for a more punitive action if a court found against somebody who was illegally operating. I'm supportive of this because it's 4 years later. People should know what they got to do. So.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Eloquent.
All right, is there any other discussion before the committee? Does someone have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Approval, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, this substitute passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the viewing audience, and we will see how discussion goes on the floor. Thank you.